What do you get when you take a former manager plus report combo who are now real-life friends? One, a management coach and sudden viral internet star who shoots from the hip, and the other, a CX exec turned advisor who overthinks everything? This podcast. Welcome to the business of humans. I'm Joe, founder of CX Joe Advisory and the Overthinker. My partner in crime is Lynda. She's the founder of Leveled Up Leadership and the Internet Star. Join us as we talk about business, relationships, humanity, success, and also failure through the lens of friendship, heaps of radical transparency and honesty, and zero BS. If you've ever watched a performance metric move, like churn rate starting to dip or retention rate going up and had no idea why, you know the drill. You pull up the dashboard and another, you stare at the same numbers everyone else is staring at. Maybe you fire off a survey and hope something useful comes back in 3 weeks. Those metrics, that's first-party data. It tells you what happened. It never tells you why. That's the problem Hark solves. They go out and get you net new zero-party data, explanations for what's driving up churn or why the new product launch flopped straight from the customers in days, not weeks. And for anyone who's spent time on the CX side, like I have and like Lynda has, you know exactly what voice of customer usually turns into. Tools that analyze what you already know. Hark goes and gets what you don't have yet. It's listening infrastructure for performance. A metric moves, Hark's AI agents know why, and it asks the right question to the right customer at the right moment, then hands you back the answer so you can actually act. Sharper creative, better PDPs, smarter launches. Most of it comes back as real video and audio, so it's an actual human talking, not another checkbox. It's the always-on teammate that's always out there getting you the insight you didn't know to ask for. And on top of all that, Hark is run by a wonderful group of human beings. They're going to be by your side at every step of the way. So go ahead, check Hark out at sendhark.com. Sendhark.com. Tell them Joe and Lynda sent you. You won't regret it. Let's get started with today's episode.
Hi, Joe.
Hello, Lynda. How's it going?
Well, living the dream, all the things, But good. It's, we record these episodes ahead of releasing them, right? So it's a holiday weekend. It's an interesting kind of holiday weekend. For me, it was my grandma's birthday. So my grandma only passed, like 5 years ago, I think. And so it's always.
So what is it? Yeah, what does the day mean for you?
Well, so, people all the time are like, oh, what are you up to? What are you doing for the 4th? And for me, it was always grandma's birthday. So it was like, I don't know, I'm going to go hang out with my grandma.
Yeah.
And she lived in this tiny little town in central Utah. And we would go to a parade every year. But the thing is like the parade, would last maybe 40 minutes. And it was like a bunch of locals walking their cows. Literally, there's always, because there's dairy farms. So there's always they would parade like the giant cow, and every now and then the cow would get loose and we would have to worry about being trampled.
Was it a menacing cow?
It was menacing, right? Wow. And it was the kind that had it was big. And
they're big. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't just like a heifer, right? Because there's a difference between a regular kind of dairy cow. This cow was not the dairy cow. This was the show cow, right? Okay. That they would walk up the street. And that one gets a little squirrely, right? Every now and then gets a little and it gets loose, and then we all have to run away. But also because they're a small town, they still throw candy at you.
Great.
And so, there's some floats, and some people do some very interesting floats. And there's the 3 dance studios that happen to be all there, and the high school marching band and all of the things. But really, it's about the candy.
Yeah.
But the thing is bigger town parades don't throw candy at you anymore. And so I'm like, is it even a parade? Does it matter? Because if I'm not getting free candy out of this, I want a damn Tootsie Roll. Then is it even? So we don't do any of those things. We don't do those things. We don't do, I'm not huge on fireworks but we would always watch the town fireworks. And so we didn't have to set, you know, it's just, so it's kind of an odd time for me because and my grandma lived until she was like 94. And again, she only died a few years ago. So almost my whole life, this is what the 4th of July was for me.
Yeah.
And so it's always kind of an interesting time because I don't have any traditions because of that.
Yeah. I think it's beautiful, though. I'm glad you shared with me and the audience. You know, you kind of lean into certain things in life, right? If it's a little bit of a different experience and emotions, and honoring grandma, you know, maybe you could still have a hot dog, watch some fireworks. But I think it's beautiful. And actually the 20-year anniversary of my dad passing is coming up this July 31st. So I know what you mean. You know, it's always like the middle of summer and a certain feeling, and, you know, it brings some things back, but always trying to take a moment to think of some good memories. But I thought of something else, Lynda, that I want to mention in response to your story. You know, I'm sure it's like this for you. Like if you go first, then I have a million things I want to say. Sometimes I go first and then you jump in. But speaking of menacing animals, I don't think I ever told you about the time that I was taken away on a horse into the mountains of Nicaragua. Have I? So
no, this feels so right for you.
My sister, I almost forgot about it, but I'm so happy I remember now. My sister did Peace Corps in Nicaragua, which, you know, I really admire her. My parents did too, by the way, in a place called Truk, Truk. It's not called that anymore. I'll save my parents' Peace Corps for another episode, but I visited my sister. It was in this town, I think it was called Boaco, and it was really like out there. It was in the mountains. It wasn't the capital at all. We took vehicles where they were like selling chicken to eat or just a whole chicken to take home, like on the van, et cetera, et cetera. We got there and she took me over to her friend Arlen's house, and it was great. I mean, we ate, I actually remember the rice and beans I had were like some of the best food I've ever had. And Arlen was super sweet and all of that. And then it was revealed that Arlen's dad actually lived up in a hut in the mountains, and they kind of pointed at it to me. I'm like, wow, really interesting. So later in the visit, this man comes galloping down the mountain on a horse, and they come to visit.
The man was galloping or the horse was galloping?
I don't know how that works. I think both. I don't know the proper lingo here. I think both of them were galloping. And then they stopped, and my Spanish was like, it was better at that time, but it still wasn't great. You know, I knew enough words I could cobble together a sentence, but I didn't understand when they start speaking really, really fast, like in their local dialect and to each other. Basically, Arlen and her dad worked out that I should get on the horse and try it out. So I'm looking at my sisters. My sister's looking at Arlen. Everyone's reassuring me, like, it'll be fine. And I get onto the horse, and like the moment I get on, it's just like, nee! And it just starts galloping away so fast. I almost fell off like immediately. I'm holding on for dear life. I'm like kicking it and screaming at it in English, which, you know, is not going to work on many levels. And it just took off. And it literally just started to go up the mountain. And it was absolutely terrifying. My sister said she was terrified too. It took me on a ride for a couple of minutes, and it galloped back down. And I got off, and I was terrified and breathless, and Arlen and her dad were laughing. They were just like, yeah, we knew it'd come back. We figured it'd be an experience. And it was.
Well, that is an experience, right?
Curious how you're going to pivot from this one.
Well, what an experience. And like, speaking of experiences.
Right? Yeah.
That's how we're going to pivot today. But today's episode is sponsored to provide a better experience for people. Do you want to tell us about that?
Oh my God, that was an amazing pivot, Lynda. And we're going to get into today's episode. It's one of those like pinch me episodes, as corny as that sounds. We actually have two people on the show today. I would say both have really inspired me for years. We'll talk about Ben. I've known him for, I guess, about 20 plus years now. We'll learn all about Ben. And then we have Fran on today's show too. The last few years has been a friend and a partner and just an amazing support for me. And so speaking of support, it's actually Fran Bryzski's company, Hark, who's sponsoring today's episode. And we're going to hear about Hark a little bit during the episode. Our listeners will be treated to a beautiful kind of deep dive, you know, into Hark around the middle of the episode. But Hark is a really interesting business. The way that I first learned about Hark was leveraging video in a way in our customer experience world to actually bring insights directly from the customer's mouth, literally. And so kind of like
Amazing.
really, it's incredible the way that video breaks through from other mediums. And that's something we're going to be talking about all of today's episode. As everyone will see, if you head to the website, which is sendhark.com, sendhark.com, you'll see that it's a holistic platform. You get customer insights, and they have amazingly brilliant ways to actually hone in and get insights from those customers directly at the exact moments that you want those insights, you know, maybe insights that you never would have captured before running your business another way. It's still video, it's audio, it's written, and then have an amazing engine behind the scenes that turn those into actionable insights and trends for the business. I could give one quick example because we actually were a Hark customer at AG1 when I was head of customer happiness there. And I'll give one quick example. We used Hark for a lot of things, but one example was one time we got a video from a loyal customer, and he gave it to us a little bit. It actually wasn't a positive video, but he let us know, I count on this product. I take it every morning. You didn't get it to me on time this time. He told us, you know, his understanding of why that issue had occurred. And it just broke through, like, you know, tens, hundreds of thousands of conversations are coming in. That one, our director of customer happiness forwarded to me. I forwarded to my boss. It was like all of leadership were kind of workshopping, like, how could we never have this happen again? Of course, we took care of that one customer, but we also learned a lot from that experience. So that's a real life example of how video kind of breaks through, again, which is a theme of today's episode, and also an example of why Fran's business Hark it's legit. It really drives great outcomes.
That's incredible. And I think that is so, you know, I've been in those meetings. I've sat in those meetings where it's like, what is the customer saying? What is it like? Why can't we retain these people? Why can't we do these things? And sadly, so often in customer support, you don't hear from like your middle of the road people, and you don't hear from the people who, you know, you get some super happy people, but nobody's calling you going like, this is the most amazing. All you can hear is like whatever the trend is of that time, right? Which correlates whatever with the business. And so having access to things where it's giving you real feedback and actionable feedback and data that you can apply to your business to really truly understand your customer and then put the customer at the center of everything that you do is incredible.
Yeah. Well said, Lynda. Well said. And as we kind of get this like little drum roll building up to our first guest, we're going to welcome on, which is actually an incredible human and entrepreneur and filmmaker, Ben Nathan. I'll just give the quick background on today's episode. I think Lynda is winning in the competition of bringing ideas for cool episodes. So I'm trying to catch up, right? And one day recently I texted Lynda, I'm like, I have an episode idea. And then I think it was a day or two later, I'm like, I have another one. I was beaming. I was so proud of myself. And especially just because I always picture you, Lynda. I like to picture in the other ends like that Joe. I am so proud of him. Damn it. Am I happy I'm doing this podcast with Joe Gilroth? Really knowing you, you're like, yeah, whatever. And you go back to what you're doing. But I like to picture it a certain way. And Ben, who we'll welcome on, really gets credit for today's episode because Lynda and I are always thinking about how to, you know, bring interesting concepts to the pod. And the unifying themes are always, one, it has something to do with business, the workplace, careers, and two, it always has to do with humanity and that common thread of humanity. And so I actually had a great opportunity to catch up with Ben on life and business, and it really got me thinking. And that's what had me text Lynda that day saying, you know, it's really interesting. Like, we've talked about humanity in the workplace and in careers in so many different lenses, but we haven't really talked about different mediums. You know, there's like written medium and you know, spoken and all of that. Nowadays, so much is AI, and you have like a million social media platforms. But Ben, the conversation with Ben really got me to thinking about this very, very powerful medium of video. And, you know, the more Lynda and I got to talking about it, we'll hear from Ben directly the way that he thinks about leveraging video in business and career, and also driving positive impacts in the world. And we'll hear from Fran later in the episode when we open up a panel on that. And Lynda, you're a bit of an expert too in your own way, for sure, on leveraging video in career and kind of injecting a lot of humanity, I think, into video. So we'll bring on Ben shortly. But yeah, Lynda, anything to add? What kind of has you excited for today?
You know, I think it is a really interesting topic, especially when we put AI in the mix and we talk about kind of all of the things that are happening and how easy it is to kind of lose that humanity in when it comes, which is such an interesting thing because I think our lives are more in video than they ever have been, right? Truthfully, like,
Yeah.
I told somebody the other day that I messaged back and forth on Marco Polo, which they should sponsor this. But anyway, so I messaged back and forth.
Lynda, we have a sponsor ready today.
Not today.
You're so greedy.
Next time. I know, right? It's fine. It's fine.
Sorry, Fran.
No, but so we message back and forth, and sometimes when I'm almost like fatigued from doing videos, I'm just like, we're not supposed to be on video this month. We were never meant to look at ourselves this much, right? And yet we do. And I've made a career out of it, and I've been able to be very successful with this. But I do think that there is so much humanity that is lost because it is still so performative. And how can we find that? How can we find that genuine thread to present to people so it's not lost? Because, you know, I think about the field that I'm in, and I think about how many people who are out there who are doing similar work to what I'm doing, and they reach out to me all the time, and they're like, how is it that it's working for you? Like, why is it working for you? I can't get it to take off. And I'm like, it's because you're not coming across as genuine. And I think that that is so important. And I would say that whether you watch my videos on whatever platform you see my videos, or you watch this, or you have an interaction with me in person, I think they're all pretty similar, right?
Yep.
I don't think that they're
true.
performative. I think that they're all pretty similar.
Yep. I love that.
So I'm excited about today's episode.
Yeah,
should we
absolutely.
intro Ben?
Yeah, let's do it. And, you know, just want to quickly comment that theme also of authenticity and the way that authenticity really rings true in video, or at least if you're doing it the right way, to your point, Lynda, that'll be something we come back to today as well. But yeah, I'm really excited. I'm going to, this reminds me of one other guest we had in season 1, where I'm going to embarrass a friend and someone I really admire with their long form bio, because I think they deserve it. You know, it's worth it. We all don't hear these accolades often enough. So yeah, I'm going to tell you about Benjamin Ryan Nathan, who's someone some of our listeners might know, and I have a hunch more will know in the future. He is an award-winning filmmaker based in New York. Over the last 2 decades, he's worked in TV, film, and advertising. He's produced, directed, and edited over 200 commercials, viral videos, short-form documentaries, and branding and marketing projects. His work has garnered over, what's this number? It's big, 20 million views online and on television, dedicated to using the art of filmmaking as a tool to better the planet. Also, he's collaborated with major organizations, including the UN Environment Program, Natural Resources Defense Council, Human Rights First, Sesame Workshop, that's a fun one, the President's Committee on the Arts and Humanities, Artistic Ground, which puts out amazing documentaries, including on Netflix, have a watch, American Cancer Society, ARM Technologies, and National Dance Institute to bring inspiring and powerful stories of human transformation to a wide audience. Early in his career, Ben served as editor on a series of over 70 short films created with renowned documentarian Ken Burns, little name drop there, and assistant directed the PBS lifestyle series Moment of Luxury. He's currently directing 2 independent feature documentary films, To Be Free on labor trafficking in the United States with executive producer Martin Sheen, and Come Dance With Me, about the power of dance to transform children's lives, based on the work of Jacques, I don't want to butcher his name. This is terrible. He's an American treasure and Ben's hero, D'Ambois, and Ben will correct me, and National Dance Institute.
Speaking of some name drops, so Ben has written and directed groundbreaking films and campaigns, working with top celebrity talent, including Deborah Messing, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Misty Copeland, James Corden, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Montana Tucker, Adrian Grenier, I didn't think I said that right, Bill Nye, the science guy, Blythe Danner, Gisele Bündchen, Don Cheadle, and James Cromwell.
I'm a huge Don Cheadle fan. Every movie he's in tends to be magnificent. In 2012, lastly, Ben founded All of Us Films to bring together top creative talent to create media that makes a profound positive impact in today's world. Under his leadership, All of Us Films has forged strategic partnerships with organizations and individuals throughout the film industry to collaborate on projects that entertain, educate, inspire, and unite. With their new offering, Impact Reel, which I know we'll hear about today, his team is bringing a new, more accessible model to the same mission, which we'll hear much more about on today's episode. All right.
Here's Ben.
Wow.
And here's Ben.
Throw in there.
We did the long intro. See, I told everyone to be a little embarrassed, but I was looking at the long intro and making a shorter one, but I think everything in there deserves some accolades and deserve mentioning, Ben. And a huge welcome on the podcast. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Do you, I think first things first, and I actually don't say this lightly because like I said, I know he's a huge force in your life and literally like a national treasure. What is the correct pronunciation of Jacques' name?
So he pronounced it Jacques d'Amboise.
D'Amboise. Okay. Thank you. So Jacques d'Amboise. And now that I haven't completely butchered it, probably a few people listening will, oh, that's what Joe is trying to say. And it's ironic because Ben, I don't know if you would have guessed why Lynda jumped in to read the paragraph that she did. But ironically, it was because when we were preparing, I was terrified of saying all those celebrities' names because I'm really bad at saying celebrities' names. Linda's like, I got it. It's Giselle Bundchen. I think just like a lot of things in life is really how broad it goes. But I tried to avoid that moment humorously, but it didn't fully work.
You tag teamed expertly.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, he's like Bill Nye, and I'm like, the science guy? Bill Nye's a science guy? And he's like, yeah, Lynda, calm down. Calm down. I know.
Yeah,
whatever, Bill Nye.
We could have done it where I said Bill Nye and then you're in the background like this science guy. That would have been fun. Yeah, next time. Ben, I'm sure people have so many questions, sort of like how all of this happened and what all these fascinating people were like. I'm going to kick it over to you, to start out just really general, kind of whatever direction you want to take it, to just expand on that incredible intro. Cue the joke that you'll say that was pretty thorough, Joe. But no, like just maybe anything you want to add, and also just explain a little bit more what you're working on nowadays.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I'm so happy to be here with you guys.
Thanks, Ben.
I think what you're building is really great and important.
Thank you.
We're all in the business of authenticity. So that's really what, when I started all of us films, it was really out of this desire to use all the great tools of film to sell and promote and educate and entertain about good things. I had done commercials for a lot of other kinds of things that just were fun to work on, but weren't the kinds of things I was really excited to be selling. And so this was just a big leap, but also a hypothesis that there could be a business around promoting positive things. So that was really the mission, and we've just really stuck with that for the last almost 14 years.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it's amazing.
It's amazing.
I think it's something we talk about sometimes on the podcast of like Lynda and I having come from, we worked at various different businesses and we're the startup guy. Lynda has a nice breadth of different companies and sizes she's worked at, from super corporate to startups, and we had our overlap at Daily Harvest. We're always thinking about it from the standpoint of, we're just doing the CX thing, and now Lynda does a lot more with content and I do the advisor thing, but how could we try to go about it in a way that is this tiny little positive spark? And Ben and I have been friends for a lot of years, which has been such a joy, via my wife, Ina, which is just like one of those incredible things in life, meeting Ben and sharing a lot of experiences over the years. But I think we'd always bond a little bit, Ben, but it was always from the standpoint of me saying, this business I'm working with, or the way we're trying to go about business, like we're trying in our own little tiny way to do it with a positive spark. But that I always really admired, sort of where you are in that spectrum or that scale, where, you've got to pay the bills and you've done incredible things as an entrepreneur, but also I think it's always been front and center and really obvious that you choose your work in a way we really want to drive a positive impact. And I really admire that.
I appreciate that. I think like we have, especially as media makers, which kind of we're all in that bucket now, but the more audience you have, I think it comes with a responsibility, and not everybody sees it that way, but I do. And it's, what are we going to do with that like eyeball time that people are giving us? How do we help? Of course we want to entertain people because that's why they're paying attention in the first place. But then what other good thing comes out of that because they saw this? Yep,
definitely.
And I think it's so easy for us to sit and talk about, especially when we think culturally. Right? Like culturally, especially in the United States, we have made millionaires and billionaires out of awful people, like awful people.
Quite true.
And we've celebrated poor behavior, right? We are to this point where, you turn on you turn on Bravo and it's all just people being awful, right? People who are just treating each other poorly and having fits. And we've almost created we have created this culture of poor behavior of, if I just stop my foot and hold my breath and behave in a way that is just so deplorable, I will get what I want, right? Or I will get internet famous, or I will get whatever, right? And I think that I love this idea of like, could we find something good? Could we figure out something and celebrate something good? Because I don't know that we see enough of that, because we have come to this point where we're celebrating poor behavior so much of the time.
And it's a vicious cycle too, because they say, like, if it bleeds, it leads. If we constantly are fed that kind of information, and it triggers that part of our brain that's that survival instinct, or that, have to react to something. It keeps us thinking that that's how the world is. And we don't get the other positive stuff often doesn't get to our feeds. It doesn't get to us in any other way. So it just keeps us thinking that that's how it is. And then we see more of it, and that's how it is. And we start to act that way sometimes too. And it all, like, fiction becomes reality and reality becomes fiction. And it's all this mishmash. So I think that's why it's so important. I think Plato said something to the effect of, like, the people who control the stories control society. So we're, as storytellers, we have to really think about what kind of an impact are we trying to have. And it's not, when you're telling a positive story, you still need drama, you still need suspense, you still need something changing over the course of a story, you still need stakes. But does it have to be all this doom and gloom and, like, terrible stuff and celebrating bad behavior? And I don't think it has to be that way. And I think that's my mission, is, like, how to share those kinds of stories and have it translate to some real world behavior.
So powerful. It really, really is. And, as we're talking about storytelling on today's episode, and then specifically video, obviously there's different ways to tell stories, but I think all of us would agree that video is one of the most powerful. And we'll talk about, video in terms of storytelling and also insights in business and all the things today. Ben, and then I'm curious, Lynda, if you also want to weigh in after Ben, but why is it that video breaks through in a way that no other medium does?
It's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of people have probably put in academic research and thoughts on that. I think on a base level, we react to reality, what we perceive as reality, right? Written words on a page have a beauty that, video doesn't. It's a different kind of a beauty, but video is probably as close to reality, to real lived experience, that people get. So when you're watching a video, I think it plays on that part of ourselves that craves reality, that craves real life interaction. So we're seeing, even if it's just a talking head, a person talking to camera, that feels like, hey, that person's talking to me, especially if they're done authentically. So I have a feeling that is, one way of looking at why. And then it's like, okay, how do we think about the emotions of the people watching this, not just the emotions of the people on the screen, but those other, secondary or tertiary emotions, and why are we trying to create that emotional sensation? What experience are we trying to transmit? Because it is that, like, one of the closest things to an experience of reality as we have. Of course, there's, like, virtual reality and all kinds of other stuff, but this is something we're seeing and experiencing every single day, from our computer screens to our TVs to our phones, everywhere. So I think it's that very, very familiar, close to reality experience.
I love that.
Yeah.
Makes total sense.
I think it also breaks down the communication barrier, right? So as someone who's made their career in customer support, and, I came up when it was just phone calls, right? The only way to interact with someone was with phone calls. And then as the digital world kind of emerged, we were going to chat, and then we were responding to emails, and we were doing these things. And we always, I think once a year I would go through some kind of communication course. And when I did my master's, I did a really long communication course. But there's, we talk about the sender and the receiver, right? And the sender could have a certain intent, but depending on whatever's going on with the receiver, they may not read the intent, right? You could write a completely cordial email being kind and thoughtful in all of the things. And, I actually think about how often I would communicate with Joe. Joe and I would go back, and it's so funny. Like if you were to go back and look at our communications over Slack, you would just giggle because Joe would write me like 3 paragraphs and I would respond with like, sure.
Scene.
Thumbs up.
Okay.
Even today, he sent me a message. He's like, hey, I'm running a little bit late. And he gives me this wonderful explanation. I had actually received it on my watch while I was making my protein shake. And so I just responded on my watch with, okay. And I didn't even I always spell out okay the correct way. It was the abbreviation. And it was just like, okay, cool.
Yeah. I think about 80% of the texts I send to Lynda, I get that response. Okay.
Yeah.
I always just picture the tone to be exactly what I want it to be. So it's very expressive, actually, in its own way.
With video is like it eliminates a lot of that guesswork.
Yes, it bridges that gap, right? So, and I am a very sarcastic person, but I try and not write that. But I can do that in video. I can do the sarcasm, and people can get it,
right. Or
I can be angry, or I can be excited. And maybe I'm speaking in all caps, but not yelling in all caps, right? That's really kind of where I believe the video breakdown, where that's bridging the gap for us, right? Mm-hmm. And that it's a way for us to communicate in a better way. And I think if you were to poll 100 people, I bet you would find that the majority of people say like the biggest flaw that we have, whether it's in business, whether it's in life, boils down to communication. And so if we have a way of bridging that gap and creating a space where we can communicate more clearly, I think that's a good thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally. And using different communication tools where they excel. Like, I always talk about, if an organization wants to put out something about the impact that they're having, you don't necessarily want the executive director of a nonprofit to go on camera and say, hey, we served 5,000 people this year. Because you can read that. But what you can't read is the experience of one of those people.
Yeah, exactly.
About how that organization affected their lives. And that's going to be really powerful on video. And then you want the backup. Here's all the statistics and here's all the other stuff that you can, and that's great. Or see in an animation, and that's great. But, telling about it versus showing, it's, that age old show me versus tell me. I think that's where video really excels.
I agree. And this feels like too perfect of a sort of bridge. So I'm going to go for it of asking you a question, Ben. And then once we welcome Fran on, we'll get his perspective too. But what you said really resonated with me, and it actually took me back to this conference I went to that I loved, and I knew there was someone with an impressive title at Airbnb who was going to speak. I'll be careful not to spill their beans too much, but it was at a conference, so whatever. And what was really interesting to me is there was someone who was in charge of a lot of their voice of customer and storytelling and insights programming. And whatever company I was at then, I sure looked up to Airbnb. So it's like, I can't wait to hear like what techniques they have. And it was funny. He was a very genuine and effective presenter. And he was basically telling us about tactics of how he tries to get anyone at the business to pay attention to what he's saying and customer stories. And it's funny because it was a bunch of years ago, but they had this breakthrough where they had customer videos instead of written. And then it was his job, one of his jobs in the business was to pick them out and try to share them across the org. And then he would bribe people to watch the video. I mean, it's always hard getting people's attention. But his point was that with video, he had more of a fighting chance in an organization of that size of capturing people's attention. So I actually wanted to ask you to talk a little bit more about Impact Reel and how this whole dynamic we're talking about kind of relates to Impact Reel and why it's interesting to you and to lots of other folks you're speaking with.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, Impact Reel is something that was born out of a need that we were seeing where a lot of our clients, whether they're mission-driven companies or nonprofits or NGOs, they would produce one kind of really beautiful, big film. It might be 3 or 5 minutes or 2 to 4 minutes, but it was like once every year or once every 2 years. And it might be for a gala or for a big event or something. And then in between, they didn't have that sort of like really powerful emotive content. And they have to fill their social media feeds with something, so they put things up, but it wasn't this consistent flow of beautiful, powerful stories. So we're thinking about how do we help bridge that gap? You know, a lot of organizations are dealing with funding cuts. It can't be that they're going to spend the same amount of money times 5 to produce this every few months. So what can we do? So the idea was, let's interview people using our skills as documentary filmmakers over their phones. We're going to record those interviews. So it's like the equivalent of a FaceTime call, but the quality is much better. So we interview people connected to the organization every month. It's a monthly subscription service, so it's recurring. We're making sure that, you know, of course, the basics, like they're framed right, they sound good. But then beyond that, getting that authentic message, getting that authentic storytelling from people who aren't necessarily used to being on camera. Maybe it's somebody who is a donor to an organization and they want to talk about why. Or maybe it's somebody who benefits from some services, but they, you know, are not used to being on camera. We can have that conversation with them just as a person-to-person connection and make sure that they're relating that story in a way that feels authentic and that gives all the information that we need to tell a story. And then we get that footage automatically. We edit it. We add B-roll or supporting content that the organization might provide for us or that we might film, and music. And we bring our skills as filmmakers to make that, you know, 30 or 90 second social reel something that's really, you feel something because of it. And, you know, it's different than somebody recording by themselves. For most people, not you, Lynda, but for other people, might have difficulty being their authentic selves talking to a device with nobody else on the other end. You know, so that ability to have a real human conversation, I think is a powerful thing. And this is meant, Impact Reel is really meant to provide anywhere from 1 to 5 really powerful social reels or email campaign pieces in every month, so that it's repeatable, it happens all the time, and it's something that your audience comes to expect and comes to learn about. And it can be applied to any type of company, any brand. Human stories are the thing that connect people to a brand or to an organization or to, you know, I always say, like, people don't give to missions, they give to people. So that's, you know, in the donor space, but it's the same in the investment space. It's the same in the purchasing space. They purchase something because it makes them feel good. They feel a human connection. There's something that matters to them. So this is a way of communicating that in a reliable, consistent way.
I love that. Yeah, I love so much about it. And I feel like sometimes business mirrors life, and this is like a whole other 10 episodes, but, you know, there's not always enough funding and respect for all sorts of arts mediums, and including video, and that's in life. But then when you think about business too, I mean, it happens sometimes. I know the places I've worked, sometimes when things were going great, we'd have like $200,000 budget for that year's like case studies and traveling to clients or more. And then sometimes you don't have that much funds. And I think it's pretty incredible. Just basically the access to, you know, really compelling videos and customer stories and so forth with chops like Ben's and his teams to businesses. So I think that's amazing. And I would like to go ahead and round out, you know, our panel today and today's guests. And I'm also laughing. And like when I said it's a pinch me episode, it's because, you know, Lynda and I joke about the stuff of like all the why of doing our podcast, and days like today, I feel like it's just an excuse and a trick of mine to introduce people that I always wanted to introduce to one another. So now I get for Fran and Lynda and Ben, to all meet properly. So a little bit more about Fran Bryzski is the CEO and co-founder of Hark, which again is sendhark.com. It's a New York City based startup pioneering a new video first approach to customer feedback. Fran has over a decade of experience working in many customer-facing roles, from startups to Fortune 50 companies. In addition to his role at Hark, he is a portfolio advisor at Hatchet Ventures. Fran is highly focused on humanizing data through customer stories. He has seen firsthand how customer feedback falls flat internally when it should be seen as a growth driver. See all the connective threads? See, this is great.
I love them.
Love the threads. Fran believes that bringing, the feedback to life will create more engagement internally, for organizations, which will result in better products, faster feedback loops, and a customer-first culture. We could all agree to that. At Hark, Fran is helping reinvent how brands connect with their audience, offering a fresh perspective on customer insights and voice of customer programs. So welcome to the podcast, Fran.
Hi, Fran.
Hey, thanks for having me. Thanks for making me sound so important. I don't think, Joe, you realize. So Ben, you edited the Ken Burns docuseries, like the Vietnam War, American Revolution.
I wish I could take credit for that, but I can't. We were working I was working at another company before I started my company, and there was a tour company that was making these films, making kind of bus tours around the U.S. based on Ken Burns films. So they had the national parks tours, they had baseball tours, Civil War tours, and we actually got to work with the footage of Ken Burns that didn't make it into his bigger films and make these shorter films. But the feedback process of working with him and getting to shoot some additional interviews with him and, meet him. And I mean, it was like it's like going to school again for a film. It's an incredible experience.
Yeah. I talk about threads. I have 5 kids, 7 and under. So when my wife was pregnant with our twins, 4 and 5, she would go to bed very early every night, and my dad was in the Vietnam War, and we have this, like, just like to talk about the power of video. I read a lot about history. I did school projects on the Tet Offensive. Like, I'm very into it because of that. But the way Ken Burns went through that and made you feel like, if you haven't watched it, it's very interesting. But like, there's an episode about My Lai and going into the village and what happened and what that did for my dad and I in terms of like conversations we could go deeper on, built like a much stronger connection. I've read about the Vietnam conflict since I was a kid, but like seeing it in that way, a whole different understanding for like what happened at Kent State and just the whole thing. So anyway, I just very much agree. Obviously I built Hark for a reason, but video can just create a much stronger bond between people. In general, because it provides perspective and context.
That's an amazing example of, something that happened on a screen and then translated to off screen to a real, human bond. So that's the goal. I mean, I wish I'd had the opportunity to work on that, but that's the point, I think, certainly for my work. And I mean, Ken Burns is he's just such a master. So
I don't even know who he was. I was scrolling, like, what am I going to watch by myself? Because my wife's going to bed at like 7:00 every night. And then I put that on.
She's tired.
My goodness. So,
yeah. Side note, Lynda, are you still thinking about the 5 kids under 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of listeners are. I think probably all 4 people on today's podcast on this call are pretty effective multitaskers. I would say that Fran is one of the most effective I know in my life. Do you remember, Fran? And hopefully this isn't oversharing, but there was one time I kind of wanted to bounce something off Fran and I wanted a favor, and the type of person and friend Fran is, he's like, of course, call me in 10 minutes. And then it was like Fran's company was closing a fundraising round with like a deadline in those same 15 minutes. He was leading his team in an offsite. I don't know, you probably had 4 kids crawling on you. I'm not sure. And he's just like, no, go ahead, man. I'm just totally here for you. Like, how could I help? And it was just all the things at once. So
that was a very stressful moment. I remember I got a phone call in the middle of it because we were negotiating the final terms, and then I was like, hold on 1 second. And then I remember that.
It's like apologizing profusely. I'm like, it's really okay, man. So great multitasker, great human. Fran, to kind of ask you, one of the questions, and I'll even broaden it a bit and then just open things up, to this wonderful group. But, we talked to Ben about why video breaks through more. I know that actually Hark is even more than video, but but one of the initial kind of, angles was the power of video, and especially in customer stories. And so, Fran, I want to ask you about why you think video hit so hard. And then the expansion of the question is like, is there something even more to it in today's world where just like we were even joking earlier this episode, but like so many communications are like abbreviated words and, like little phrases and like everything's sped up and automated. And is there something about it like today where video just really still hits for people?
Yeah, I think it's, we went through the creator economy and now the world is quite different. Creators are still surging. And I think it's because they're just so good at providing content that's digestible very quickly. I think that the number one like source of value or like thing is attention. I know at my company, like, I don't know if you all use Claude, but I used to get reports internal reports. All of a sudden they turned into like 10-page reports with so much more information, but I can't digest more. I think there's a reason why as a society, we've all gone towards Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok. And I know, Lynda, you mentioned Marco Polo, like these ways of interacting have all taken off. And that was a big precipice, is like, why did I start Hark? Because I'm seeing the way that humans are engaging with each other. They're craving that attention. They're craving more content because it's easier to digest for them. But so much of what's happening from business to consumer is just like plain text, and it's not human. So I think we are all craving attention. I think video is just the easiest way for us to digest. Like, we were made as humans to talk to one another, and that's the easiest way for us to understand everything going on. So I think the points you bring up around, like, maybe Joe overanalyzing things or seeing a text and like, well, is it that tone? Is it this tone? Like, it's very, very important to understand everything in the situation. So yeah, I mean, I think that's clearly why it breaks through. And when you talk about, like, in a business sense, you brought up the Airbnb example. We're inundated with stats and metrics and figures and all the quantitative data in the world, but the emotional threads and heartstrings is what can spur a much deeper conversation, as I just mentioned about with me and my dad. And as humans and operators, like, we're built to make judgment calls. We're built to infer. We're built to make bets. And I think the ones that are just like, oh, I need all the data to support my decision, like, there's a role for that. But the CMO executives and CEOs are there to place big bets and get outsized returns. And if you're going to do that, you've got to have a hunch. And to get a hunch, you've got to understand all angles. And to get there, I believe video is by far and away the best method to get there.
I totally agree. And I think all of us, I mean, you gave your example at the beginning, talking about how those films really spoke to you and how that created an emotional connection for you in other parts of your life, right? I think each one of us can think about a time that we listened to a speech, watched some, like, there are even some commercials that might just like trigger that emotion. And everyone can remember those moments. I cannot remember any emails other than the ones where I was like, oh my God, that was the longest email ever. But other than that, like, again, I left with an impression, not with information. Right. And I believe that video is, and again, that's why I think that there's so much attention on things like Instagram and those types of things. I think it also taps into our natural kind of voyeuristic characteristics as humans too, right? We would much rather like see what's going on versus like read what's going on. So I yes, and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Joe, like, you mentioned the example of a brand loyalist coming in and giving it to you at your past company, but like, do you remember what the NPS score was then? Do you remember what the CSAT score was after? Like, no one can, like, it's just, I think we've dumbed down brand loyalty to a numeric value because we're trying to track it, but it's just not how humans engage. Coincidentally, at the same time, customer acquisition, like, a lot of people just would rely on Meta's algorithm and just hope that it refined itself to attract the right people. But now that's gotten harder than ever. So what I find is organizations want to speak to their customer. They want to know who those personas are, and they can't just rely on, like, once a year doing a study with McKinsey and hoping that pans out and then saying, oh, here's our persona, here's how we talk to them, and they're on a PowerPoint slide. Like, it's got to be a dynamic, always on, fluid connection and conversation, because things change too quick. Like, the way I'm operating now is very different than just 6 months ago or a year before that. I think further on the qualitative side, I've got, as I meant, like, I have a lot of kids, I've got a lot going on. I'm learning how to play ice hockey at 37, but you don't know that from quantitative data around, like, me purchasing Kane sneakers. You just know that I'm a white guy who's 37 and I live in New York. But you could target me much differently with, like, hey, like, you got a lot going on, like, you need to recover. We're the best to do X. Like, it's a very different message. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Definitely.
And can I say the big plus to having the videos is it keeps your CEO out of your customer service inbox, which Joe and I can attest to is never a good idea.
It's usually a good thing, especially because they might respond to the one customer in a way only they can, and it's awesome. But then they have so many questions for us, and everything goes off the rails. I have, like, a genuine sort of observation or question I'll post to the group, and maybe Ben, I'll toss it to you first. But I can't decide whether video it always brings out more authenticity than other channels, or is it maybe a twist on that of, like, it has the potential to, but it sounds like you really have to go about video creating in a way that is authentic, and that kind of breeds authenticity, right? In the way that you go about your work, probably the way that you get feedback out of other people. We talked about, Fran, and inviting so much feedback from customers, and Ben, with all the work you're doing, including Impact Reel. So can you help me to think this through? Like, is it the former or latter? Like, do you still have to dedicate yourself to going about the video creation work in a way that, make sure that authenticity does shine through?
Yeah, I think that's the key, because not everybody can turn on a camera and speak in an authentic way and have it be natural, right? So we all have seen lots of social content where it feels like we're being read to, and we probably are. You can sometimes see people's eyes moving across the screen on the teleprompter, right? So it's not that video is like the solution for that. It's about how we use it. So, why Impact Reel, or why any kind of documentary setup where you're interviewing someone, is because you're having a real human interaction and recording that and putting that out. And I think that's why podcasts are so great. And that's why, especially ones like this that are conversational, like everyone's just here chatting, and like you hear people saying, right, yeah. And that's not all just like cut out and cleaned up. It's not sanitized. It's
we don't cut anything out, Ben, so you're in luck.
Great. That's great. So I think like that is how it's about how you use the tool, right? Sometimes, like, would we ever say that, Shakespeare should have been video? No, like Shakespeare is Shakespeare, and like it's beautiful and it's an art form in and of itself, but it's being used. I mean, of course, he didn't have the option of video, so maybe he would have done selfies the whole time. Who knows? But that's, that was a choice to have this written word, and that we still interact with that. But when we do it, we're reading it, and we're trying to embody it, and we're trying to bring it off of the page and into our reality. So it's about how we use the tools. It's not, I don't think it's a one tool fits all. I think it's about finding the right tool for each different type of communication.
Yep. And are you actually focusing on tactics, like when you're preparing something, as I know you are now, that might even be submitted to film festivals, like, and it's going to be that polished, and it needs to be, and you have backers and you've been working on it for years, but are there tactics that you use to still try to make that polished product feel more authentic and almost like, improvisational in a sense?
Totally. I mean, when we're filming interviews for one of our documentaries, first of all, we're trying to make it feel like it's not lit, even though we're there with rates and crews and all this stuff. We want to make it look natural, so that's one thing we do to just kind of bring that authentic feel. Actually, I was talking with one of the editor on one of our projects yesterday about how sometimes as a filmmaker, even as a documentary filmmaker, we're heightening reality intentionally, or like sometimes like reordering things slightly in order to create a desired experience in the viewer. So it's not always about being exactly literal about how something happened, but it's about like what experience and understanding are we generating in the audience, and that's got to be true to what the original thing was. So we're using a lot of different tools. Are we having the person being interviewed looking straight into the lens, or are they looking like off camera, more like 60 Minutes style? That's a technique. Something we use on a bunch of projects is it's this like mirror system. That's the official name of it is called the Interrotron. It was created by Errol Morris, who's an amazing filmmaker. But basically, it's a series of mirrors where the person who's being interviewed can look straight into the camera lens, and then they're seeing the director. So they're not seeing the lens. They're seeing a reflection of the director, and the director sitting next to the camera seeing a reflection of the person being interviewed. So that eye contact happening, sort of like we all have right now. We're seeing each other, but we're looking into the camera. It's like that. And that's a very intimate kind of deep effect. I think one of the great examples of it is the movie The Fog of War, which has this like, straight direct to camera interview with McNamara about these very intense topics, and it brings it to life, and you feel like you're like that voyeuristic kind of thing you were talking about, Lynda, that like it feels like we have this view into this person's world that we wouldn't have without that.
That's amazing. And Fran, pivoting to you, and thank you, Ben. You have me so many thoughts and replies in my mind. Really well said. And I'm smiling a little bit because, Fran, I feel like in your world and with your product, you don't really have to work very hard at sort of the authenticity, because it's really just asking customers to, speak into the camera at the moment that they had something to say. And I'm actually thinking back again to AG1 where we worked with Fran. We were a customer. And I'm just thinking, I'm remembering like there were times that people would weigh in and the lighting was terrible. They were either thrilled or they're even grumpy about something, which could be very, very helpful as well. But there were other times that somebody would take us on the walk, like walking their dog with them. But Hark was the product that had sort of facilitated and created that moment. We never would have gotten it otherwise. And it's like, hey, AG1, am I live? And it was like, I take AG1 before I walk my dog. Is this okay? Am I allowed to say this? And then they would talk for a few minutes about their impressions of the product and like what they'd like to see. And it was invaluable. Or one time somebody, I don't know, Fran, if you remember this one, was on like a yoga retreat in some remote part of India. And it was just like in that moment, probably because she had taken her AG1 or whatever, but like it was just the moment she wanted to share with us. And it really broke through to me again. I don't think she was going to take out her phone and like type out an email to AG1. It was because the video, the moment, you know, the opportunity to create a video was there. But yeah, Fran, what are your thoughts on all of this? And even if you want to talk about those like really authentic moments that you see in your world.
Yeah, interestingly, like I don't think they all. So with Hark, we do video, audio, screen recording, and text. It's not all video. I really think it depends on the ask. Like people just want a way to give context in the best way. And that might be a short text message with a picture of what they're talking about. That might be an audio snippet where they want to talk and they don't want to be on camera, but they want to tell you about why they're requesting something. It's very different than a chatbot of like, my thing is damaged versus, hey, I want to show you this because I think you guys can do this better, whatever. So there's different methods of communication. What I find with a lot of our customers, specifically on the brand marketing and performance marketing side, is like UGC is sort of like the holy grail. It's like, oh, we want more UGC. And it's titled user generated content, but it's all fake. Like it's all kind of bullshit. Like we're paying people to come in and do this like really, like to Ben's point, like really polished video and like the lighting is a certain way and here's how we want you to say it. And it's fake. And I think people are just really seeing through that. We're smart as human beings. We understand this and we're on there. And I think people are fatigued by it, candidly. So what we're finding from a lot of our customers, interestingly, which is not what I built the product for, but they're just like, we want that like raw, organic, just real.
Yes.
Like the thing you mentioned, Joe, like someone's in India, they're on a yoga retreat. They're just talking about like their day. That's very, very different. And I'm finding we've leaned really hard into diary studies. The platform without all the bells, like I don't want to get a little jargon, but basically what the AI does is it figures out what's happening in your business and who should we reach out to and why should we reach out to them at this time? So like a metric might move and we're like, hey, we want to get the why, not the what. I think customers really enjoy that. They're like, oh, like you're reaching out to me with a specific question because you want to get better, not a generic, like, we value your feedback. Would you take 5 minutes to do it? Like no one cares. I think the same thing is starting to happen with like reviews and UGC. Humans are smart and they're like, I don't care about all this fluff. Like just give me the real authentic and I'll actually probably be a more loyal buyer because of it.
Yeah. And I think, let me tell you, I struggle with sometimes with tasks. Okay. Like the written tasks. I'm probably undiagnosed ADHD. It's fine. I function just fine. Okay. Don't worry about me. But if I can stop and like do a voice note or send you a quick video or whatever about my feedback, we're also like super fatigued with surveys. I am so over surveys. Like I can't even stand it. And of course, always the ones that I want when I'm flying on Delta. Come on, Delta. I never get them. But having the opportunity, I think that that's where you reach out. Not only are you getting a more authentic bit of feedback, right? And you're going to get more feedback because you're going to open up this space for people who are like me, who are like, I'm not going to write the things, right? I'm not.
You like Delta?
It's a bit of a love-hate, honestly. It's a bit of a love-hate.
They're like my favorite airline, but great example. They don't use my product, but if they hear this,
Delta should. Delta,
horrible,
hey,
crazy weird experience on the plane, and without getting into what happened, but we were walking off the plane through the tunnel to get like after we landed, and so many people were irate, and they were talking to each other like I wish I could give them this. Like they were genuinely saying this. Like I wish I could like give them the feedback. I can either like go somewhere, but they're not going to do anything. And I remember one person was like, they'll probably send me a stupid survey, but like that's not going to. And then they kept walking. I'm just thinking in my head, like, what if you hit them in the moment? Like you're walking, hey, real quick, like anything on the flight you want to share? you record it as you're walking to get your bag, and you're just like, hey, like, yeah, like this whole thing happened. And then if Delta sees like a theme of that, very interesting, right? And that's a negative experience. But what about a positive experience where it's like, I've seen this, like the stewardess like helped me calm down my baby. Like incredible experience. And like to have somebody share that, and then Delta can use that to be like, our stewardess go above and beyond. Look what they did with this passenger. Now you're driving trust in the economy. That's not staged. That's authentic. It's real.
Yes.
It's such a missed opportunity.
I completely agree with you. And Delta is definitely missing out and should definitely contact Hark.
1,000%. And this is the part, now I'm smiling because anyone who listens to our pod knows that Lynda always tries to wrangle me and land the plane. And I just like resist a little bit. One quick question, and probably, we'll land the plane soon. But Lynda, I really have like one very genuine question, because you could have started in like answering all of these with the way that you leverage video. Harkening back to the, Hark, that's funny. Harkening back to, you're welcome. Harkening back to that moment where, we talk about where I was in Montenegro last summer and texting you and like, oh my God, did you just go viral? But you were creating great content and everyone who would watch it would appreciate it. But then there was like this inflection point and suddenly it was hundreds of thousands or millions of views. And was there any change in what you were doing when it comes to authenticity in video? Because we've talked about like your style, and anyone who watches your videos online knows it's 1,000,000% authentic. Just you're in the car, you're at home, you're wherever you start recording and you go. But was that like with intention, or that's just always the way you approach it?
There was definitely a shift in how I was doing some things. So I learned a little bit more. I mean, I believe that, again, like I said earlier in the podcast, whether you're here, whether you're on my content, whether you're having a conversation with me, I believe that you continue to get the same person, right? You continue to get the same person. I did learn a little bit more about how to grab people's attention. That specific video, which 9 million on TikTok, 10 million on Instagram, a couple views. Yeah. But I remember having the conversation with you, Joe, and you were like, I showed my brother that post. And I was like, this is exactly who Lynda is, because I was drinking my Diet Coke, right? From McDonald's, because it's the best Diet Coke. I will fight anybody who says anything different. And it was just a moment. I was like waiting to pick up my nephew, and it was this moment of like, I've got to get this thing done. And so I just recorded it. And I think that was one of those turning points for me of understanding authenticity over performative, right? And yes, my posts are still performative because you have 90 seconds, right? Like if you were to listen to me, I mean, I would drone on forever, but there is this performative thing, but I think what comes through is really just like, hey, I'm really trying to help you. I'm really trying to give you a little nugget or a little something, or I'm trying to make you feel seen. And I think that even if I figured out some of the attention things and figured out how to do the things, I believe that the authenticity that comes through my post is so much of like, hey, this is really just coming from a good place. And ultimately, I really just want you to feel seen, and I want you to feel like you're not alone, because from my personal experience, when I was going through it, I felt so alone. And I was like, holy shit, other people feel this way? That's weird, right? Because we all like to think that we're unique humans. And sometimes it's just nice to know that there is no original thought. So
1,000%.
Because it reminds me a lot of one of my mentors, Scott Nielsen. He always says, life is a performance, but we're the best at playing ourselves. So it's like, we're not actually our personalities, but, I think on a spiritual level, I think we're something deeper than that, but we are performing as ourselves on a daily basis. So making slight adjustments to how you do that is not necessarily inauthentic. If it comes off as inauthentic, then it is. But if it is you just like reordering something, then it's still authentic. It's just, you're aware of who your audience is in that moment.
Yes. Amazing.
Beautiful.
Well, I think we did the thing, guys. We talked the video. We talked about authenticity. We talked about being humans. We talked about airplanes. So I don't know that we could have a more complete episode than we had today. But because I always have to close the episode this way. And because we want to be human and it's not always like fun and good times, I'm going to ask you if you've got something you want to share with the people that's got you a little hot under the collar. So, Ben, I'm going to just go alphabetically here. Ben, I'm going to start with you. Anything you want to share with the people that's got you hot under the collar?
I was thinking about this, and like something that we talked about in our conversation, like all the different modes we can use for communication these days. Like we can do video, we can do audio, we can do text. There's sometimes that I'm communicating with people, and WhatsApp is sometimes the easiest way to do that if we're working on an international project. It's real time, talking back and forth. And sometimes it's just an inundation of voice messages that could be a text. Like a voice message to say, okay, is just like too much. So sometimes I get a little hot under the collar about that. I'm like, why is it? And then if it's in another language, then it doesn't give me that like transcript automatic. I was like, either the technology has to catch up or the people have to like do, I don't know. So that's maybe I can have a status that says like text only for the next 10 minutes or whatever.
I think you should actually just put it in there. That could have been a text. I challenge you. It's like, yeah, it's kind of like, at work, that could have been an email instead of that 90-minute meeting.
Yeah.
Same thing. Amazing. Fran, anything you want to share with people that's got you hot under the collar?
Yeah. Everything talking about writing because of AI is sounding the same in the sense of every time I read like a long paragraph thing, in the second paragraph, it says, not this, not that, but this. And it drives me insane because it's just so obvious. And I know people are talking to AI and reformatting it, but it's just the same. I crave uniqueness so much. In fact, a lot of times I'll spell things wrong and not change it just so people know, like, I'm actually writing this. I'm not, it's not perfect. So that has me hot under the collar.
And the M dashes?
Those are, I feel like those are yesterday's news. It's like now the structure of it is so obvious. You're like, just change it up a little bit. Like just write something on your own.
I just asked Claude to misspell some things on purpose.
Smart. I tell Claude no M dashes. I'm like, don't do the M dashes, and it needs to sound like a human. I scold Claude a lot.
Oh,
could be.
I was thinking about that.
For me, Claude is a he. Yeah, for me, he is.
Everyone has strong opinions on these things. I'm helping to a friend. She's like part of this wonderful business, and you like get like food samples and stuff. The point is, you interact with an AI, and it is like, oh, does your family want crackers or coffee or whatever? And I referred my sister, and then we found out one time talking that my AI for that business is a woman, and we have this great rapport, purely platonic, but like we're great friends and everything. And my sister's is a man. And she pictures like the way he looks, and we were just arguing about it. It was amazing.
I picture Claude. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Lynda, go ahead.
No, I was like, I picture Claude as a man because I really enjoy telling him what to do.
That's fair. I was talking to somebody recently who called a customer service number and had a whole conversation with this great representative who was really helping them. And they asked one more question, and the representative said, "That's a great question. Let me get you over to a human being who can answer that." And they were like, "What? This whole time? This was not a human being?"
Guess it was a pretty good AI.
It's too good. It's
scary.
Disconcerting.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like having a conversation with Teddy Roosevelt. Weird. If anybody got that reference. No? Nobody got the reference? Okay.
She always says this to me right at the end of the episode. Completely reeling now. Whoosh, over the head. Okay.
Got you hot under the collar.
I'll go on theme a little bit from other people's. And there's a very entrepreneurial spirit on today's panel, so you'll kind of relate. But I use both Claude and ChatGPT in running my little one-man business. And last night, I just wanted to tweak an invoice to send a client a different invoice. And I was just having trouble, and I was really tired. And I went to ChatGPT, and sometimes it has me hot under the collar when the scope increases just wildly, especially when I'm tired and very like kind of prone to suggestions. And so like 40 minutes later, we were like redoing like my whole CX Joe, like color scheme and like brand. And it was like, wait, I don't want to just leave things here. That's the easy way out. Let's think about how to make it cohesive with proposals. And I was like, yeah, totally. And then it was like time to go put the kids to bed. It was like an hour later. I had so much to do. And I was like, I haven't made the damn invoice. And eventually I had to get really cross with it. I was like, please stop. Please just send the invoice right now, please. And I'd go to do something else. And I came back and it was still resisting me. And I just had to get really cross with it and just stay on that one window. And I finally won. It was like an hour and a half later and I changed a few numbers and words.
Outstanding.
But that's just me. What about you, Lynda?
Yeah, my electric toothbrush has really got me hot under the collar. And I'm going to tell you why. So it's got a great battery life, but when it comes time to charge it, it takes me 11 hours to charge my toothbrush. And I just am like, I can speed charge my phone in like an hour. My son drives an electric vehicle. We can charge that bad, but a whole car that carries humans in 8 hours, right? And my toothbrush takes 11 hours. And I find that unacceptable. Like, come on.
Feedback video?
It should be.
Well, but what I'm saying, you know, now that we're going to connect the dots, right? You know what doesn't take a lot of time?
What, Lynda?
Gathering customer feedback using Hark.
Nice.
Ben with the
see how I did
setup,
that?
Lynda with the slam dunk,
The alley-
Fran smiling.
Nice.
Yeah.
We do want to thank both of you for being here so much. Ben, can't thank you enough. This was kind of a dream to have you on.
Yes.
This could literally go on for hours. I know you're probably both late to things, and we're sincerely sorry. It's hard. We could talk to you for hours. But Ben, thank you so much. And I really want to encourage everyone to keep an eye. You or someone you know probably could use Impact Reel for your business. Keep an eye out on All of Us Films too. There are amazing things coming down the pike there. I want to also thank Fran for coming on today's podcast. And we do want to thank you and thank your team at Hark one more time for sponsoring today's episode. And we've talked a lot about, Hark today, but what I want to add on kind of the human touch. I mean, it's cool because you have like the video aspect we talked about. You have great broader technology, and you just have a great group of human beings, which probably anyone listening to today's episode can get a sense of Fran, and you hire your team the same way. So I think it's like this awesome trifecta. And, thank you very much. I'm going to shut up now and actually let our guests respond. But thank you both so much.
Yes. Thank you.
It's been great. It's been a really fun conversation. I love how everyone's coming at this from a slightly different angle, and we're all, exchanging our stories and ways of experiencing video and feedback and authenticity. So thanks, guys. It's been a really, really great conversation.
Yeah, likewise. I met Joe through actually an investor when I was raising another round. And every time we talk or he introduces me to somebody, it's just interesting. Like the world is very, very small, and good people seem to go good people. So thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun, and I appreciate it. I am late to get my kids though.
It's nice being in the space with good people.
Okay. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.